What's going on? This is Robert, and thank you for tuning in to Station Square. And today we're going to be chatting with Eliah Mountjoy. We're just going to get right into this. But first off, before we actually do, hope everybody's doing well. I hope the weather, the weather's nice and all that good jazz. And yeah, and hope everybody's, doing the best they can under, what's been going on around the world, which yeah, that's yeah. So yeah, I how about we share some positivity and just chat, just talk about stuff. So yeah, that's why Eli is here today. So thank you very much for joining me on this lovely afternoon
Oh,
or
thank
whichever
you
time
for
zone
having
that
me.
you're in.
Yeah, I'm in Pacific time.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So I
What?
think it's about the same time as mine, like 2 o'clock to 11
Yeah,
as of this recording. So yee.
yeah, yeah, and I just want to say thank you, Robert, for getting the pronunciation of my name right. That's not something that um a lot of people actually get the first time. It's not that crazy of a name, but it's weird enough that I've got, a bunch of different things, but you, my friend, just landed it. Thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, did I actually pronounce? I finally got a pronunciation right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So on the podcast, no joke, my dude. This is kind of something that's been like a running joke, if you can even call it that. I end up butchering someone's last name. I end up getting somebody's first name wrong, but now that I finally got it right, that is a victory in and of itself, so I should celebrate. But
Yeah, it's funny because with voiceover, it happens all the time that you just get some wacky word or a string of words that is a tongue tire or twist, and you just get you fumble or you a particular set of words together just it doesn't flow out of your mouth and it just comes out weird. And the director or the writer or the game dev or whoever will just say, "Oh, it's actually pronounced like this," or you just go back and you pick up the stumble or whatever, and it's part of life. It's part of life.
oh, absolutely, man. So what I usually do, it's oh, and thanks for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, like let's just, you know, you could just give us like, a brief rundown of where people can hear your work, what have you been doing, and just yeah, just to break a little, do a little icebreaker, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah, sure. Um, well, I started my VO career, as it were, properly in commercial. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get into the story, the whole origin story or whatever later. But
Sure.
you know, um, I studied commercial, so a lot of the first things I did was commercial, and then I kind of merged into anime and video games and dubbing and all the rest of that stuff. So, but I'm probably most recognized with Devil May Cry was like one of the first games. Devil May Cry 5 was one of the first games I had the pleasure of recording. I guess that was in 2017. That was a really cool experience. And Days Gone, that was a lot of fun. Demon Souls, I've done some voices in Genshin Impact, G Arena, Diablo Immortal. Most recently, Fire Emblem Heroes. I'm Bastian in that. Fallout 76, I'm Pete Myers. I was in Hearthstone and Tower Fantasy. Octopath Traveler 2, I'm Sakurachi in that. I just did a game that came out called Metal Slug and War of the Visions. Um, yeah, I've I got a couple of things that are coming out that I can't talk about just yet, which I'm really excited about. But you know how the
Gotta break
NDAs
those
go.
NDAs.
Yeah,
Gotta respect them.
yeah. So But yeah, I've done a bunch of dubbing. Also, I actually like dubbing. I like it a lot. As I know some people are like, I don't like the confines of um, having to match flaps or but I really like it. The first one I was kind of in was Ryoma, Prince of Tennis. I play Shinjo. I do a lot of serving, the big power serves. And so in Fist of the North Star, plays Shu. I'm Aim Warrior, the Borderline. I'm Udo Kiryu. Mobile Suit Gundam. I play Slugger. Uh, is this a out of curiosity, to Robert? Is this a family show
Yeah.
or so the four-letter words can be left aside?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, gotcha. Um, and then The Walking Dead, and then all kinds of dubbing stuff. The Boys, Babylon Berlin, Ingobernable, The Investigations, Sky High Cauldron. I was in Full Metal Alchemist. I got to play Roy Mustang. That was really cool.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, yeah. That was the live action dub. Obviously, not the anime. That was already done. But to
Oh
get a
yeah.
chance to play Roy Mustang, that was really cool. And then I got to go back for the Revenge of Scar and Final Transmutation and stuff like that, and do some characters there too. So that was a lot of fun. And then I've done a bunch of promo and trailer and commercial stuff, like I was saying before.
Man, well, first off, I just want to say congrats on Full Metal Alchemist. Can you tell that, like, as voice actors, we kind of stumble our words way too often?
Now, all the time,
Um,
and people are always
yes.
like, "Oh, I thought you were a voice actor." You're like, "Well, yes, but I'm also a human, and that's what humans
I'm
do."
also a human being. That's what we do all the time. So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, congrats on FMA. Like one of my favorite anime. Um, I really loved watching it when I was like, I guess I was in middle or high school, and now I'm like, um, in my 20s, and I'm just starting to dabble more into um, like watching more shows, like other anime, just to broaden my horizon, so to speak. And yeah, I just really think that FMA was one of the first where I'm like, oh, okay, so an English dub can act because like before I wasn't really into anime, but I think it was FMA, Cowboy Bebop, and let's see, I think the original Pokemon dub, where
Mhm.
it's like, okay, um, English dubs of anime can actually be really, really good. And it can also, serve as an inspiration on like, it can really change your life. So there's plenty of stories that I could share about, how those shows have impacted me, but I might do that in a separate little vlog or topic at another day. But this is about you. So, yeah, like we could just get right into how you got started. Like, was this always something that you wanted to do? Like, did you have anything like what's your little story? Like, did you start out doing VO? Did you do anything else? Or I'm just kind of curious now. I'm just, the curiosity is now getting the best of me.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to be like, when did it happen?
When
When
did
am
this
I?
start?
Yeah,
Yes.
when was I like, I want to be a voice actor? It wasn't, I didn't really even know it was a thing till much later. But I do know, like, my mom, really before I was even kind of conscious and aware, in the car seat in the back of the car, an ambulance would pass by, and I would mimic it. I'd be like, woo, woo, and so there was always there, even before I, could think, even before I was really cognitively aware, I was hearing noises and then emulating them. So I think that shit I came out like that. And I loved music. Music was the first art form that really gripped me. I remember being in my grandparents' car, and they would put on the radio, and I was like, I was very young, and it's like, what is this sound? What are these sounds? This is incredible. So it was very and as a child, I was much more creatively inclined. than I was, mathematically or scientifically. I was much more creative. Needless to say, I didn't do very well in school. It didn't capture my attention. I was very ADHD, very, I didn't want to study.
Oh, I totally relate to that.
Yeah. So, and also I came from a sports heavy family. Nobody in my household, nobody was a creative. Nobody was an artist. It wasn't around. It wasn't there. The only two people really who took note of me were both my grandmothers, my maternal and my paternal grandmother. One of whom I saw more than the other because the other one lived further away. But they were the ones who were like, "Oh, this kid needs music lessons. This kid needs painting lessons," and they invested that in me pretty early. And that my attention was on. I was like, I'm locked in there. But I was I'm tall. I'm taller than the average person. So my whole family is. So it was about basketball. It was about sports. It was about football. And so I played all the sports, all of them. And I like being physical. I like movement and I like athletic stuff, but it didn't capture me. I remember I went to go see a school play in my high school. My mom took me. And I'm not really a Broadway kind of guy, you know, but they were doing Singing in the Rain. And dude, I could not believe how awesome it was. I saw basically my peers up there, doing the song and the dance, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, "There's Brent. He's just he's doing. Look at him. He's tapping. He's singing." I came away from that. I couldn't believe how inspired I was for it. So it was in my blood to want to perform, but it wasn't until I mean, I was lucky to be in a cul-de-sac with a bunch of kids about my age. So we would get together and play games, little action figures, or we'd give each other adventures. So we'd put wrap duct tape around our arms and get walkie talkies and get our toy squirt guns, and we'd be like, okay, you're a Navy SEAL that's gone AWOL, or you're a futuristic cop, and your mission is to, and we'd give each other these kind of live action role playing game stuff, and that led us into then role playing games, Dungeons and Dragons being the most obvious one, but we played a lot of Rifts, which was like a um, um, what do you call it, like a cyberpunk kind of version of that. We played a lot of TMNT. They had their own RPG. So it was part of me. I wanted to be part of this imaginary, story driven, full of interesting characters kind of world. I wanted to be part of that, but I was a long ways from it because of the family I grew up in. It was much more about sports. So it wasn't until maybe somewhere in college and after college I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take some acting classes. I actually started taking a directing class and then realized, oh, I think no, I want to be the actor. Um, and that's kind of what got me into it. I also I was really into some animated series that really captured me, like the old school Hobbit, the Rankin Bass version, the scary one.
Oh, yeah.
So scary. Gollum is horrifying in that one. Smaug is really terrifying. And the characters. So just seeing those performances, that indelibly etched itself into my being. I still go back and reference that stuff today because the performances are mind-bogglingly good. And so, but like I told you, I was really into music. I really loved music, and so when I moved to Los Angeles, a mutual friend was like, "Hey, our other friend that we grew up on that same cul-de-sac with basically was he's in LA too. You guys should get together. Back in the day, he and I used to make songs. We'd make music like with our little Casio keyboards and like, you know, totally rudimentary, totally basic, but we made songs. And we're like, hey, we should get together. We should play the music and just catch up for old time's sake. We played them. We were like, dude, these are really good. These are really, really good. We should get the band back together. So we did. And my early years here in Los Angeles, because I didn't grow up here, there was a lot of it was spent in the band. And man, those were some wild times. Fun, exhausting. And but I think it was like somewhere halfway through that, we had a neighbor that lived across the street. Her name was CC Parsons. She was the granddaughter of Graham Parsons, and she loved music, and so she would like hang around and like dispense her wisdoms and stuff. And she's like, you really need to get into Freddie Mercury. I loved Queen, but she was like, no, you need to study him. And she's, of course, there's no way. I'm a baritone, and he's like a true tenor. There's no way I could keep up. I'm gonna shred my voice trying to even sing a song of his. But she was like, you know what? You should do voiceover too. And she introduced me to it. And I thought voiceover was, some guy doing this kind of a thing, like the old time newsreels. Um, and she's like, I can introduce you to a guy. I lived in Hollywood at the time, so we like went up the street to this guy's like office. It was stacks of paper, stacks. And I walked in and it felt like I was walking into like a mini New York set, but only the skyscrapers were paper and manila folders and drawers and stuff like that. It was crazy. And at the far back was this guy. I remember him with like a cigar. I can't imagine that would be, but that's how I remember him. And Cece's like, hey, this is my friend I was telling you about. He wants to get into voiceover. And he's like, yeah, all right, kid, that sounds pretty good. You got a reel for me? And and I was like, I didn't even know like what a reel was, or that I needed to have one, or I didn't even know what he was talking about. I was like, no, I don't have a reel. He's like, okay, well, why don't you come back to me when you do? And I was like, okay. And I left there being like, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Whatever that was, I think I'm good. I'm about the music, man. So it wasn't until a couple of years later the band broke up, as bands do. And I was like, and I had all this gear. I had microphones and all this stuff. I was like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do now? I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll look into the VO thing, because I've got all this gear. I want to perform. I've always wanted to perform. I skipped over a whole chapter where I moved to San Francisco before Los Angeles, and I studied stage and theater and Shakespeare, and yes,
Yes.
and that's where I really fell in love with acting. That's where I like we did plays, we did Chekhov plays. It was great.
It's
I like it. I got to
it's
delve in.
always the Shakespeare. It's
Yeah, I didn't understand it either,
I've
man.
studied it too, man. I
Awesome.
yes, I
Yeah,
learned about it. Yeah.
yeah. It was hard for me to click into that. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
old English, OLDE, and I needed instruction. I needed classes, and so I worked a myriad of odd jobs and side hustles, and then took these acting classes at night. They were great. They were wonderful. Phil Bennett was my teacher. He was actually so Stanislavski taught Sonia Moore, and he learned from Sonia Moore. So it was a pretty direct line in terms of what Stanislavski actually was trying to, the method, the system, he called it, was he was trying to create it. You hear the term a lot. It's a method. You're a method actor. That was like an iteration along, his progression of creating this, ultimately what he called the system, and that branched off and came to America before he kind of finally arrived at this. So like the staying in character thing, all the time, that wasn't exactly what he intended, but that's a whole other story. That goes on the podcast where you're talking about your stuff. Um, but so I learned to love acting, at that stage. I was like, I really do like this. So flash forward back to when I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna start dabbling into VO. I like acting. I've done a lot of this music. I've got the equipment. I know how to kind of run both. I think I want to integrate. I knew I had a friend, another friend who did voiceover. I'm making quote signs. Voiceover, and I knew so little about the industry that I didn't know the kind of all the subgenres of, like, what we were just talking about them: anime, promo, trailer, commercial, interactive, imaging. And that's what she did, imaging, which was, on the radio, like KQR1 505, the fire. And so she had that big husky, like silky honey voice. So she probably did that 1051, the hug, or whatever. Yeah. The call sign for the station was not the hug. I just made that up. But um, that's the kind of style, um, voiceover that she did. And it's like, where did you go? How did you do this? And where did you? And she's like, oh, I went to this one guy, and so then that's where I started. And he was like, hey, buddy, listen, you gotta be comfortable talking just as yourself, and that's commercial. And I was like, oh, but I want to do characters, and I want to do story. And he's like, yeah, but you want to make money too, right? And you got to be comfortable doing your voice. So I started there. I was not good. I was not a natural. It was really painful. It was pulling teeth, and then my fingernails, and then when all those were gone, hairs and flaying of the skin. It was it was a miserable experience, needless to say. But I got through it. It took years of me just kind of trying to do copy and trying to get more natural with it. And then I finally landed my first agent by getting my first gig was a Chrysler gig, and that got me my first agent. And then I had access to some some of the stuff I really wanted to do, video games and animation and stuff like that. Now it's different because the cat's kind of more out of the bag, and you don't have to necessarily have an agent to get access to those things. But then it was more the case. So that's kind of my foyer into VL.
Oh man, that definitely answers a lot of my questions. So yeah, um, I'm just like, okay, since you kind of answered like pretty much half of the questions that I've already like had in my mind, I guess that just kind of, you know, we'll just breeze through these next few that I have. So, yeah, I know you mentioned that you started into commercials and then you kind of slowly segue into, animation, video games, anime. So we'll just talk about some of the roles that you've done.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, let me see here. So, you've mentioned this earlier, but you were on, Octopath, the new WWE that just came out, Fist
yeah,
of the North Star, Mobile Suit Gundam, Mr. Lone, Fire Emblem. So, yeah, just give us a quick run through of like, how it was. Oh no, demanding. Okay, so how just how's the whole experience of getting to be a part of all of these really big franchises? I mean, like Fist of the North Star, WWE, Fire Emblem, like these are all franchises that a lot of people have grown very like have fallen in love with. I mean, particularly Fire Emblem. I mean, like it's been really picking up steam over the last few years. So I just gotta ask this.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
As you know, when you go in, almost never do you know what it is, that you've been cast for. Sometimes you do, but almost never. So when I got in for that one and they were like, this is what it was, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Because I have a lot of friends that have been part of the franchise. and just following them and seeing what it's about. I'm like, this is going to be a real honor, and it's really cool. Bastian Bastian is a character. We were just talking about Shakespeare. I really got to kind of incorporate sort of that that old English, hotty totty um, kind of attitude. Because a lot of the characters that I usually have done, like like Days Gone, like Devil May Cry 5, those kinds of things, I play these much heavier characters, and my voice goes a little easier down than it does up, but I think I'm probably a true baritone, so I can kind of slide back and forth. But most of the characters I have are a little more, a little darker, a little heavier, a little grueling. So to actually have landed Bastian, that was quite a delight, I must say. And I got to play. I just they like everybody there. They were it was a really fun session. Cassandra Morris was directing, and she was and all the game devs, they were like, okay, here's the character, here's the world, here's kind of the scenario, give us a take, and we'll see where we're at. They're like, okay, we like that, now let's just try this. And I love sessions when they're free to play, because kind of like we were talking about earlier, when you get in and you're tense and you're tight because you want to do well and you want to show up and you want to do the best you can do. um it that can impede on the performance. You don't want to stumble, you don't want to, but to realize, like, there's gonna be mistakes, and thank God they have a start and a stop and a cut and a paste, and it doesn't matter. All they need is that one golden moment where you're free to just live that character. And that was such was the case with Bastion. They wanted to, they knew that what the IP was. They knew what the story and the whole thing was. But then they were like, let's play. We like that take. Now let's try this. And whether or not they ended up using that other take, sometimes they're like, oh, it's great, let's do that. And sometimes like, okay, that was fun, but I think we're going to stick with the first take or second take or whatever. But just to be able to play, that was I love that kind of thing, because then it's so much of it is like improv, because life is like improv. You just spontaneous, and it's there is no one right way. It's just, here's how this one came out and here's how that one came out. It reminds me, it's like a segue. I did this podcast called Carcerum, and that was a really really fun, maybe the most emotionally gratifying role, because it's a podcast. There's many episodes, so I think there was 18 or 20 episodes in that podcast, and I don't think I was in every episode, but I was in most of them. So there's lots of character development. There's a big arc, you know what I mean? And that was one that I could really sink my teeth into, and have the whole kind of character arc spectrum to be able to play over the course of several sessions. And so that, like, those ones are a whole lot of fun, versus, like, then you have some other games that are much fewer lines, and so you have to kind of inject a lot more of the um story in much fewer lines. So, and that's what it's about the story, and the character is a facet in the story, and it's a gear of many gears. And so just finding out, like, where your gear belongs and what your gear should do in order to serve that story best, that's a really satisfying process for me.
Yeah. Let me see here. I would love to just talk about just, I know you mentioned some of your favorite, like, childhood, um, I guess shows or movies that you've watched, and going
Yeah, I
back
wanted to
to the,
say,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. That reminds me, because we were talking about Mobile Suit Gundam,
Mhm.
um, Warrior at the Borderline. Oh, I wasn't. Yeah, I wanted to say this because you were telling me about the ones that you were into. Um, anime didn't immediately grip me. You know, it was like Robotech and kind of that battle mech kind of genre that really got a hold of me. So, like you, getting into Cowboy Bebop, um, Samurai Champloo was one. So I was going to ask you, like, I was like, oh, that those are the ones that I actually got into and really liked. Avatar: Last Airbender, that was one I really liked. What are some of the other ones I was going to ask you? Because maybe you turn me onto some things that I need to watch. What were some other ones you liked?
I was just about to say Avatar. I mean, even I know it was on Nickelodeon, and I know it was, made in the US, but I don't know. People consider it to be anime influent. I don't know, but yeah. Let me see. Some of the other ones, I haven't really been watching a lot of anime, if I'm gonna be completely honest. I did watch Fully Cooley a while back. I've just kind of been on like the classic 90s, you know, shows like Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon.
Yeah,
Let me see, Digimon is another good one. And huh. Yeah, Benedict, oh, Trigun, and yeah, a couple of other ones that I mean, I'll probably just give my recommendations. I know once we, after we conclude this, I know I'm probably gonna forget something, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh man, I can't believe I didn't say that, rats." So,
you could just
I
email.
think, I'm sorry.
You just email me then.
Yeah, totally. But yeah,
Did you
let
ever
me
see Death
see.
Note?
Death Note, I have not actually.
Somebody told me to watch that, and I started, and I was like, it's obviously it's darker, you know. It's a
Yeah, I've heard it's. Oh, Neon Genesis. Wow. Okay, Evangelion.
Evangelion. Yeah, yeah, I've heard that one's really cool.
Yeah. Let me see. If there's anything else I missed, just, I'll just
Yeah,
email you. But
yeah, yeah,
what was I also? Okay, so let me see. I know there's not a lot that you can talk about right now because everything's kind of under NDA. So what
yeah.
would you want to leave us out on? Like any closing thoughts or just last piece of advice?
Well, um, a voiceover, just being an actor, being an artist, whether you're a painter or whatever, you get into it for the love of it, right? You want to do it because you love it. Everybody that wants to do it does it because they want to do it, not because you know it's like, well, I'm a lawyer or a doctor because my parents made me. That's the classic one. But because of that, so many people are doing it, which means it can be a hard road. Which means for the person who wants to do it, they have to understand that there's going to be hard times and there's going to be grand times, and it's all and it's all those times in between that you have to, like a lily pad, like a frog on a lily pad, get from one to the other. And the hard times, especially when you're starting, can seem like a lot have longer duration than the good times. The good times are like when you get into the booth finally, and you're like, yeah, I can finally get to do this thing. That's kind of a blip on the radar in terms of all the training and all of the driving and the auditions, and there's a lot more going on onto it then. So it's like you have to have a realistic approach with yourself to be like, how much do I love this? Do I love it enough that then the few minutes or hours I get in front of the microphone is worth putting up with all the stuff that's going to have to come with getting to the point where you can get in front of the mic. And if the answer is an honest yes, then you should go for it. But I feel like there's a lot of people these days just kind of see the glitz and the glam of being the voice behind fill in the blank name character. And and don't really realize, oh, this is going to be a hard, it's going to be a hard road. It's going to be hard, because so many people want to do it because it's so awesome. It's such an awesome job to have. So I guess to answer your question, what would be my parting um, words? It would be, if you've been able to be honest with yourself and the answer is yes, I do want to be a performer, an artist, a voice actor in this case, then stay with it, stick with it. And while you're staying with it, continue to get better. Take classes, practice every day. If you can't do it every day, read from a book out loud. Maybe that's the best place to start, because everybody's got a book or something on you can just read off a phone or something like that. Get comfortable reading. Get comfortable with the sound of your own voice. Because that's like I was saying earlier, that's something that one of my first mentors told me. You've got to be comfortable just sounding you, and that's the hardest thing. Miles Davis says, his quote is, it takes a long time to sound like yourself. And it's like, that's a weird thing to say from a master musician, especially in a genre of music, jazz, which is known for improv and being able to move in and out of movements. And what a profound thing to say. For me, it was a really big lesson, because you can like get in and be like, here's all my voices. I can do Homer Simpson, I can do Family Guy, I can do whatever, but what's like really valuable, something that a production wants, is if they need a Homer Simpson, they're just going to get Dan Castellaneta, or you have to bring yourself. That's much harder. One of the early acting exercises that I was telling you about in San Francisco, these Stanislavski exercises. One of them is walk out into a stage and there's just a chair, nothing else but a chair. The exercise is to walk out as yourself and just sit in the chair. And it's like crazy how hard that was. Everybody in the class, one after the other, we're all trying to put something on, trying to make it more interesting. Instead of like, no, they call it the Hawthorne effect. How somebody, as soon as they know they're being watched or listened to, instantly changes their performance, because we have this like social internal wiring of needing and wanting to be accepted. So you want to try and pose yourself in the best possible light so that you be accepted by the tribe, and that comes off as contrite and forced, and you know what I mean. And then it's not like a genuine performance. It's not just living in the moment. And as soon as you can like live in the moment and be natural and free and not have to push, and that translating into voiceover is even another thing, because with the mic you don't have, like,